If you're running Salesforce CPQ today, you already know it works. It structured your quoting, enforced pricing discipline, and brought real speed to your sales process. But revenue ops leaders across industries know that the quoting part works. It's everything around it that's getting harder. Midterm subscription changes, usage-based billing, multi-entity contracts, renewals that require manual intervention, finance reconciling revenue after the fact. That's the problem Agentforce Revenue Management, ARM, was built to solve. And in this video, we're going to walk you through it. We'll walk through why modern revenue models are pushing beyond traditional CPQ, what makes Agentforce Revenue Management fundamentally different, how to assess if the timing is right for your organization, a practical migration framework, and real outcomes from a client who's already made the move. Revenue models today are evolving much faster than traditional CPQ systems were designed for. Just look at subscription businesses. They've grown 435% over the last decade, which is about 4.6 times faster than the S&P 500. That kind of growth changes everything. Pricing itself has become much more dynamic. Around 65% of SaaS companies now use tiered or hybrid pricing models. We often see CPQ implementations start to struggle. Over time, configuration becomes hard to maintain, quote calculations slow down, and adoption drops. In fact, studies show up to 2/3 of CPQ implementations never reach full adoption. CPQ solved the right problem for its era's revenue model: fixed price, transactional sales. It made quote generation much faster and more structured by letting reps configure products, apply pricing rules, and generate accurate quotes directly within Salesforce. For one-time purchases, bundles, and simple-term contracts, it worked well. The rule engine was its core strength, enforcing product dependencies, pricing logic, and discount controls to prevent errors. It was sales-centric, fast, and gave teams the automation they needed. As companies moved toward usage tiers, CPQ introduced a level of pricing and lifecycle complexity. First, performance. CPQ runs synchronous calculations within a 10-second apex CPU limit. Fine for small quotes, but large, complex deals hit timeouts and scalability limits. Second, customization. To support newer pricing models, teams layer in custom apex, middleware, and external billing, which makes the architecture increasingly complex and fragile. Third, the handoff gap. Quoting is tightly managed, but billing and renewals live in separate systems, creating delays, integration overhead, and lag for finance. Finally, visibility. Without a shared data layer across quoting, contracts, and billing, real-time revenue visibility breaks down. That's the gap Agentforce Revenue is designed to address. You get a shared product model, a unified pricing engine, and a continuous life cycle from quote to renewal. Let's break down exactly how these two platforms differ. CPQ is a managed package sitting on top of Salesforce with its own object model and upgrade dependencies. Agentforce Revenue Management is built natively on the Einstein 1 platform. That alone eliminates a significant layer of integration complexity. CPQ focuses on quoting. Agentforce Revenue Management expands that to the full quote-to-cash lifecycle. CPQ relies on connectors and custom code for integrations. Agentforce is API-first and headless, built for flexible enterprise integrations. CLM in CPQ is typically separate. In Agentforce, it's native, fully integrated with quoting and billing. And while CPQ uses rules within the quote, Agentforce brings AI-driven workflows across the entire revenue lifecycle. Salesforce has positioned CPQ in an end-of-sale phase, while Agentforce Revenue Management is where the company is investing heavily. Now, if you're thinking, is it time to migrate? Assess readiness across two dimensions: urgency to modernize and complexity of your existing CPQ environment. High urgency, low complexity. Start directly on Agentforce Revenue Management. High urgency, high complexity. Migration is the right move, but phased and well-sequenced. Low urgency, high complexity. Feels stable but scaling, multi-entity billing, or midterm subscription changes can expose limits fast. That's why assess first. Know whether your org is new, strained, stable, or heavily customized to determine how fast you move, how much cleanup is needed, and the right migration approach.
Knowing your starting point is one thing,
But understanding the signals that it's time to modernize is what drives the timing and approach. 4 signals tell you when migration becomes necessary. Customization overload. You've got custom QCP logic, bespoke Apex, workarounds everywhere, and every release is a regression risk. Pricing complexity. Usage-based billing, hybrid subscriptions, dynamic bundles that require heavy scripting just to function inside CPQ. Quote-to-cash gaps. Quoting, contracts, and billing are in separate systems, with teams manually reconciling data between them. Scalability limits. Multi-entity operations and global pricing exposing limits in API throughput, metadata, and upgrade dependencies. And in terms of timing, the strategic approach is new implementations. Start directly on Agentforce Revenue Management, full API first, designed for enterprise-scale revenue models. Existing organizations. Take a phased, roadmap-driven approach. Clean up technical debt, consolidate integrations, and enable end-to-end revenue operations incrementally to avoid disruption. Alright, once you've decided it's the right time to move, the next question is, how to execute a CPQ to Agentforce Revenue Management migration. Here's our 9-step architectural approach for technical success and operational continuity. Assess your current CPQ state. Customizations, API dependencies, performance constraints. Redesign the revenue model. Map subscriptions, usage-based pricing, and multi-entity structures against Agentforce Revenue Management's native pricing engine. Normalize the product catalog. Clean SKUs, standardized attributes, logical bundles. Rebuild the pricing strategy. Replace brittle QCP logic with declarative, scalable rules. Refactor contract architecture. Move contracts, amendments, and renewals into Agentforce Revenue Management's built-in CLM. Align order and billing flows. Order management, invoicing, and revenue recognition running end-to-end in the platform. Clean and transform data. Map legacy CPQ fields to Agentforce Revenue Management native objects. Data quality drives everything downstream. Rebuild integrations for durability. API-first connections to ERP and finance without recreating fragile legacy connectors. Govern a phased rollout. Start with critical product lines, run both systems in parallel, and migrate progressively. So really, it's about thinking ahead, planning each step, and leveraging Agentforce Revenue Management the way it's designed. Agentforce Revenue Management works like a breeze. For instance, a rep can simply enter the request, either in plain language or through Revenue Cloud's product configurator. Within seconds, Agentforce configures the products, applies pricing rules, validates the contract terms, and calculates any usage-based fees. It checks active licenses, reads usage and performance data, and surfaces trends that could affect revenue. And because it's API-first and native to Salesforce, every downstream action, billing, revenue recognition, and cross-system coordination runs automatically. We've seen that across industries. One client had multi-region billing with 1,000+ line item quotes. Previously, preparing the quote, syncing with finance, and validating the contract could take hours and multiple spreadsheets. With Agentforce, the same workflow runs automatically in minutes, and all downstream systems are updated in real time. When moving from CPQ to Agentforce Revenue Management, the biggest risk is how you approach the migration. Even experienced teams struggle. And usually, the first misstep is trying to recreate CPQ customizations one for one, means inheriting the same constraints in a new system, underestimating the product catalog. Duplicate SKUs and messy bundle structures carried forward produce the same downstream errors in a new environment. Catalog cleanup is foundational work. Since Agentforce Revenue Management unifies quoting, contracts, billing, and finance, your migration plan has to include those teams early. Waiting until late creates dependencies, delays, and a risk of revenue leakage. Insufficient testing. Pricing procedures, decision tables, and API-first workflows require validation across every scenario. Usage-based billing, hybrid subscriptions, and multi-region deals. And finally, getting IT and revenue stakeholders aligned late. Approval dependencies and integrations that surface late can create exposure to ASC 606 compliance. To make this more concrete, let's look at how this plays out in a real migration scenario we worked on. Before Agentforce Revenue Management, one of our SaaS clients was stuck. Subscriptions lived at the quote level, usage data was elsewhere, and midterm upgrades meant new quotes, manual billing, heavy reliance on custom workflows, so basically constant firefighting. We moved them to Agentforce Revenue Management. Subscriptions and usage were managed together, and midterm upgrades could update the active revenue stream directly. Once that foundation was in place, the impact was witnessed in 3 months. 85% gap reduction between billing and finance, 30% lower operational overhead, freeing teams for strategic work, 25% boost in sales velocity with automated midterm upgrades, real-time revenue visibility for better decision-making, and it's just one of the many successes we've seen. Agentforce Revenue Management is where the future of enterprise revenue operations on Salesforce is being built. The architecture, the investment, and the platform direction are all pointing the same way. Whether you're exploring your options or already building a migration roadmap, the right guidance makes all the difference. We'd be happy to help you map out what that journey looks like for your organization. Reach out to us at info@grazitti.com. Thanks for watching.